Imagine being judged not for a broken rule, but for the way you laugh. One flash of superiority, and you become the emblem of what's gone wrong. The municipal courtroom hums like a radiator in winter, thin, steady, unavoidable. Judge Caprio lifts a file, taps the edge flat, and looks over his glasses at the young woman in the first row. Alyssa Clark, 26, polished nails, a soft blazer that never saw a laundromat, tilts her phone, thumbs moving, the corner of her mouth curled as if the world were a private joke. "Ms. Clark," he says, voice even, 40 miles over the limit in a school zone. That isn't a paperwork error. That's a risk. She doesn't look up. "Do you know how many times I've been pulled over?" It never reaches court. "This time," he replies, "it reached me." Her eyes finally rise, cool as the screen she locks with a click. "Fine. Let's wrap it up. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. The room quiets, the kind of quiet that touches every bench. Caprio allows himself the thinnest smile. "This isn't a cafe, Ms. Clark. We don't serve justice a la carte." A muscle jumps in her jaw. "I wasn't endangering anyone." "You understand you could have hit a child?" "Nobody was there," she says. "I'm not an idiot." He leans forward, elbows on the bench, the file open like a cautionary sign. That is exactly what's said by people who already did. Her grin dissolves, leaving the face of someone unsure which expression keeps her safest. From the back row, an older woman murmurs, "Mm-hmm," the sound of long memory. It lands like a pebble in still water. Small, but the rings keep spreading. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. He never has to. "This fine isn't about your bank account. It's about whether anyone else's life matters when you're in a hurry." His gaze fixes on her. "From where I'm sitting, your compassion looks impounded." Color climbs her cheekbones. The phone, suddenly heavy, disappears into her bag. She laces her fingers and immediately unlatches them, a tell she can't disguise. "You thought you came to get it handled," he says, closing the file. "That's not how this room works." Her reply is quick, reflexive. "With respect, Judge, I know how this town works." "And I know how consequences work," he answers. "They don't check last names before they knock." The officer who wrote the ticket stands against the wall, arms crossed, not gloating, not grim, just the patience of a man who has watched the same mistake wear different shoes. Two teenage spectators shift on a bench. Someone coughs. The clock clicks. Alyssa's composure buckles, not in a crash, but in a quiet misfire you only notice if you're listening. A shallow breath. A blink she holds too long. Caprio sets the file aside and folds his hands. "Tell me," he says, "when you pressed the accelerator, what was more important than the children who crossed that street every morning?" She opens her mouth, then closes it. The room waits, a held note. She doesn't have an answer, only the habit of being forgiven before she's asked. He nods, as if her silence is an affidavit. "We'll proceed," he says. "Not on your timetable, on the courts." For the first time, her shoulders drop. The smile that invited a storm has nowhere to go. She isn't being measured by charm, pedigree, or the speed of her schedule. She is being weighed. And she understands, too late for wit, just in time for truth, that she didn't enter a place where problems are paid off. She entered a room where they're named, and where the currency is conscience. Caprio studies her a moment, then, almost conversationally, "Your father is Senator Clark, isn't he?" Alyssa lifts her chin, the name like a badge. "He is, and he backed your run for mayor. Generously." "I remember," he says. "Tell me, has he also taught you that fairness is something you can order up when needed?" Her smile tightens. He taught me to respect the law. On paper? Caprio asks. Or in practice? A flicker crosses her face, gone as quickly as it came. She exhales as though clearing fog from a mirror. I grew up where everything looks correct from the street. Speechwriters, spotless lawns, photographs on mantels. Inside, it was schedules and image. No room for mistakes. We didn't make them. We managed them. So you learned, he says, not unkindly, that rules are scenery, and the play goes on anyway. I learned that consequences are selective. Her voice isn't sharp now. It's tired. If something broke, it was handled before morning. Apologies drafted, favors called in. The lesson was simple. It won't reach you. Caprio notes the motion at her hand. She's rolling a thin gold band along her finger, thumb to knuckle, back again, a metronome of nerves. You're angry, he says, but not at me. She lets out a small, dry laugh that isn't laughter at all. You have no idea how many dinners I sat through while he promised the state accountability. He believes it. He does. But at home, accountability meant silence. If I embarrassed the family, I was reminded who paid for my college. If I behaved, I was reminded who opened the doors. Either way, I was a headline waiting to be written. Is that why you spoke to the officer the way you did? Caprio asks. To make the headline blink first? She looks down. The ring stalls at the base of her finger. When you are always someone's daughter before you're yourself, you start pushing to see where the edges are. You test. You press the gas. She swallows. And you expect the world to cushion the landing. In this room, Caprio says gently, I don't cushion. I listen. The words hang there. She searches his face for a trap and doesn't find one. Her shoulders ease a fraction, as if a bolt has been loosened. You should know, she continues quieter. He's not a villain. He reads to school kids. He visits hospitals without cameras. He thinks he's protecting me when he calls in favors. But it turns you into a person who only understands two speeds, untouchable or exposed. There's no middle. Then let's build one, Caprio says, a lane where you're simply responsible. She nearly smiles, but it isn't the practiced curve from before. There's a pinch at the corner of her mouth, more human than polished. Do you ever get tired, she asks, of people performing in front of you? Everyone comes here with an act. Sarcasm, bravado, tears, he replies. Costumes change. The fear underneath is identical. He leans back, voice steady. I don't dislike laughter. I dislike when it's used as a shield. Sometimes what sounds like a chuckle is the sound people make so they don't break in half. Her eyes flicker, startled not by the sentiment, but by being seen. You think I'm hiding a cry? I think, he says, you want someone to hear it without punishing you for making it. Alyssa looks past him to the seal on the wall, to the flag, to the long bench where strangers sit with tickets and small disasters. The room smells faintly of old varnish and winter coats. She turns back. The ring slides once more and stops. My father says justice is blind, she murmurs. I grew up believing it was just discreet. And what do you believe now? Caprio asks. She doesn't answer right away. I believe I learned a fluent language of image, she says finally. But I never learned how to apologize. Not really. Today is a good day to practice, he says. Not to me. To the people your habits endanger. Alyssa nods, once. No performance, no lighting. Just the awkward tilt of someone stepping out from behind a curtain and feeling air that hasn't been filtered for them. The gallery is silent, respectful, the kind of hush that isn't about fear, but attention. If I'm sharp, she adds, eyes on the desk. It's because sharpness kept me from being cut. Caprio allows the slightest breath of approval. Tools can be repurposed, he says. A scalpel can heal. Her laugh this time is small and unguarded. You really do talk like a judge. I talk like a neighbor, he answers. A neighbor who'd like you to slow down near the crosswalk. Something loosens in her posture. The grin that once dared the room to object has shifted into something plainer, almost tentative. The gold band sits still. What rippled through the gallery earlier, annoyance, curiosity, settles into a gentler weather. The old woman in the back clasps her purse a little less tightly. The officer's stance softens from rigid to patient. Her earlier amusement returns, changed in temperature, no longer a blade. What had looked like mockery reveals its shape. Not contempt, but armor. Caprio sees it, names it without smearing it. The mask, at last, has a hinge. Caprio signals to the officer by the wall. The man steps forward, creased uniform, calm eyes, voice like a well-worn hinge. When I stopped her, he says, Ms. Clark asked if I knew who her father was. Alyssa keeps her gaze on the table's edge, then lifts it. I said it. No theatrics, just admission. The judge doesn't scold. That changed things, he says, but not the way you hoped. A faint stir runs through the gallery. She draws a breath as though choosing a language. You don't know what it's like, she begins, careful, to wake up a surname. People don't see you. They react to you. Half are impressed, half are angry. You walk into a room and every face has already decided. If you want to be seen, you have to startle them. Saying his name is a shortcut. It opens a door, or slams one. Today, Caprio replies, I see a driver who treated the limit like a suggestion, and her own dignity the same way. She takes that without flinching. The ring on her finger moves once and stops. He turns a page. Does your father know you're here? Yes. The word drops heavy. His exact line was, the court will take care of it. For him, this is a mention in a column. For me, it's ink that doesn't wash out. Stains can be redyed, Caprio says. A mark can be a border to something new if you choose it. Her mouth tightens. Easy to say from the bench. Harder to do from the front row, I know, he answers. He taps the folder. Let's get specific. He reads, 85 in a 45. School zone. Time, 7:52 a.m. He lifts his eyes. You passed a children's rehabilitation clinic. Do you know who funded it? She shakes her head, puzzled. No. Your father, he says. The wing that treats kids after traffic collisions carries his name. Alyssa blinks as though the air cooled. You brought that up to make me feel awful. No, Caprio says evenly. Guilt is a puddle. People can step around puddles. I'm interested in weight, the kind you carry until you drive differently. The officer doesn't move. He doesn't need to. The room has already leaned forward. What do you want from me? She asks. Not defiant, sincere. To grasp that speed isn't bragging rights, the judge replies. It's a calculation. You weren't just late. You gambled with bodies you couldn't see. Her face changes, subtle, like a light turned down. The posture that read as bored now reads as braced. She glances toward the seal again, then to the door that brought her in, measuring the distance to a life that felt simpler 5 minutes ago. When the officer pulled you over, Caprio continues, invoking your father wasn't a request for mercy. It was a bid to avoid being measured at all. I was raised to think the scale was for other people, she says quietly. Our crises came with a manager. And yet, here you are, he says, with no one to manage this but you. The older woman in the back folds her hands, a a soft click of beads against purse leather. A man by the aisle nods once, not at the judge, but at the idea of it. "If I tell you I'm sorry," Alyssa asks, "does it matter?" "It matters," Caprio says, "but not enough on its own. Apology is a door. Responsibility is the step through." He closes the folder. The sound is modest, final. This isn't about punishing a last name. It's about interrupting a pattern. She inhales, steadier now. "I thought my name would keep me from falling," she admits. "It feels more like a weight tied to my ankle." "Weights build muscle," the judge replies, "if you use them." Her eyes hold his. The earlier gloss is gone. There's a trace of fear, yes, but also a small, stubborn clarity, the kind that survives campaigns and cameras. In that quiet, she seems to understand, there are rooms where pedigree is static, like a portrait on the wall, and rooms where truth moves toward you regardless of who posed for it. She doesn't reach for her phone. She doesn't look to the officer for a clue. She squares herself to the bench, and for the first time since she entered, she looks like a person deciding rather than reacting. The gallery breathes out together, soft and low, the way churches sound after a hymn. And sitting there, beneath her father's invisible shadow and the clinic she flew past, Alyssa learns the most ordinary, frightening lesson this courtroom gives. A surname can buy a microphone. It cannot buy an answer. Caprio lifts a long white envelope from the file and taps it once against the bench, as if checking whether it's hollow. "Ms. Clark," he says, "I received a letter from your father." Relief flashes across her face, quick and bright. "Then I suppose we can resolve this efficiently." "You may want me to read it aloud," he replies. She settles, expectant. A few heads in the gallery tilt forward. Caprio opens the envelope and unfolds a single page. He reads without dramatics, the way you'd read a grocery list, certain that the item itself carries the weight. "Your Honor, do not reduce or dismiss the penalty. My daughter must learn that the law is not a favor dispensed to the well-connected. If she wishes to bear my name honorably, let the consequences stand." Signed, Senator Arthur Clark. The syllables land like small stones. Alyssa's color drains. "He wrote that? Privately?" "He wrote it to me," Caprio says, placing the page on the desk. "Not to an audience, to a judge he respects." She laughs once, a dry spark. "He respects you when the cameras pan. This is election season. He can't afford a headline that reads, 'Senator saves daughter.' He's not protecting the state. He's protecting himself." Her voice thins. "He never protects me." Caprio's reply is steady. "The person who asked the officer, 'Do you know who my father is?' wasn't protecting his principles. She was trading on them." That lands harder than the letter. She stares at the wood grain like it might offer an exit. No quip, no grin. Just stillness. "Look at me," he says. She does. "I've fined more people than I can count," Caprio continues. "Some deserve the maximum. Some need a word, not a number. Money, in your case, would be the least effective teacher in town." She blinks. "So what? Community service? A lecture tour? I can donate?" "No," he interjects softly. "You don't need another stage. You need perspective." He closes the file and slides it aside, clearing the space between them. You sped past a children's rehabilitation clinic at the hour kids arrive for therapy. Kids who lost what you treat as flexible. Tomorrow morning, you'll come with me to that clinic. You will see what speed takes. A murmur ripples. Even the officer shifts, surprised, but not disapproving. Alyssa studies him, searching for a seam. "You're serious?" "I don't play with what you don't understand," Caprio says. She folds her hands, then unfolds them. And if I refuse? Then we proceed today, he answers. Fines. Possible suspension. Another headline you can outrun for a week and forget by Thursday. He pauses. Or you can keep the license and gain something you can't buy. She inhales, slow, as if trying out a new lung. You think one visit changes a person? I've seen a single afternoon move a stubborn heart more than a year of penalties, he says. I'm not promising a miracle. I'm offering friction. It slows people down. From the back row, the older woman nods, faint approval creasing her face. The room's air feels denser, as though accountability has a physical temperature. Alyssa glances at the letter again. He wants me punished to look principled. You want me taught to become one. I want you safe, Caprio says, and the children who cross that street safe. If principle comes along, good. She lifts her chin, not in defiance, but in decision. What time? 8 o'clock, he says. Wear what lets you be a guest, not the center. She manages a ghost of a smile. No charm, just nerves. That eliminates a few options. Good, he replies. He raps the bench lightly, not a gavel strike, more like the closing of a book you plan to reopen. No adjudication today. We reconvene after. The officer notes the time in a small pad. The clerk marks the calendar. The gallery, which had braced for a number, learns instead the outline of a lesson. Alyssa gathers her bag without the reflexive reach for her phone. She stands, smaller and somehow steadier, as if the floor has stopped tilting. Outside, traffic hums. Inside, the letter lies face down, name at the top, signature at the bottom, the space between them filled with a father's public virtue and a daughter's private bruise. She thought punishment meant a transaction. Pay, post, proceed. She's beginning to suspect the real kind begins where transactions end, in rooms that aren't televised, beside beds that roll on rubber tires, in the sound of a child working to lift a knee. Tomorrow, she'll find out. The next morning, the sky over Providence is the color of dishwater, low and honest. Alyssa waits on the sidewalk outside Hope Road, with her hands inside her coat sleeves, as if the day might bite. Caprio arrives without escort or ceremony, carrying nothing but the time. Inside, disinfectant and crayons share the air. The lobby mural shows a painted crosswalk, children mid-step, a sun with uneven rays. A volunteer wheels a cart of paperbacks past. This is not a place that performs. It works. Have you been here before? Caprio asks. My name's on the donor wall, she answers, small. I've never walked the halls. A therapist guides them to a glass door. Beyond it, wheelchairs, parallel bars, bright tape marking lanes on the floor. A boy lifts a foot, like it's a heavy book. A teenager moves her fingers against a rubber band, face set with the resolve of someone who has negotiated with pain, and won yesterday by an inch. A girl no older than 9 rolls toward them. Stickers bloom on the spokes of her chair. She looks first at the judge, then at Alyssa, with a frankness only children manage. Do you drive? She asks. I do, Alyssa says, throat tight. My mom says you have to go slow near schools, the girl adds. A car didn't. The sentence lands with the plain gravity of a stone on a pond. No splash, just widening rings. Alyssa's reply collapses before it forms. Caprio doesn't fill the silence. He lets the ring widen. A woman approaches, the girl's mother, eyes marked by nights on plastic chairs. We don't hate the driver, she says, low enough not to turn heads. He was young, in a rush. A rush is a kind of fog. We all get lost in it. Alyssa nods, a jerky motion. I was always rushing, she manages, because I thought my time outranked other people's. The mother's hand rests on the wheelchair handle, steady as a metronome. I used to hurry everywhere, she says. Now we schedule 15 extra minutes for every door. She looks at Alyssa without accusation. It's not the money, it's the minutes. They come out of the same account as childhood. They move on. In a therapy room, a boy learns to stand with 2 braces and a belt. The therapist counts, not loudly. 1, 2, and rest. On a corkboard, snapshots of patients ring a poster. Small victories, dated and pinned. Proof that progress needs witnesses. Caprio stands at the threshold, palms folded behind him, the posture of a visitor who understands he is in a place where effort is sacred. This is what speed takes, he says finally. Not hypothetical, not a lesson plan. Alyssa's eyes follow the slow choreography of practice. Lift, place, steady, pause. There's a receipt, she whispers. I just never looked at it. Laws, he answers, exist to keep receipts from being printed. They step into a quieter corridor where the donor wall glows, etched names in brass, including Clark Foundation, uppercase and impersonal. Alyssa studies the engraving as if it were a stranger who shares her last name. He built a wing, she says. I blew past the entrance. Both can be true, Caprio replies. A bell chimes somewhere. Time for meds, or a break, or both. A therapist waves. The girl with the stickers returns from a lap, proud, flushed. I did 2, she tells them. Yesterday I did 1. That's how change looks, Caprio says. Not a speech, a second lap. Alyssa's composure slips, not theatrically, but like a knot coming undone. I don't know how to make this right. You can't make it right, he says. You can make it safer. Start there. She presses her fingers to her eyes and then drops her hands, embarrassed by the gesture, then refusing to be embarrassed. I always thought a fine was the cost of convenience, she says. I never factored in wheelchairs, or braces, or 15 minutes for every door. They pass a bulletin board with a flyer. Teen driver safety night. Parents welcome. There are empty slots on the sign-up sheet. Alyssa stops. If they'll have me, she says, voice gaining a spine. I could talk here, not as a headline, as a driver who was stupid and lucky. Caprio considers her for a long beat. Luck is a poor instructor, he says, but it's a fine warning. They circle back toward the lobby. At the exit, the girl raises a hand. Bye, lady who drives, she calls. Go slow. Alyssa swallows. I will, she answers. No promise has ever sounded less ornamental. Outside, traffic mutters along the avenue, ordinary and immense. She looks at the crosswalk in front of the clinic. The paint nicked by winter, the sign slightly tilted, and then at the judge. I'm late to this lesson, she says. Late isn't never, he replies. It's just the first honest mile. On the sidewalk, she pulls her phone out and, after a pause, slides it back without unlocking it. For once, the next move isn't on a screen. It's measured in how she'll approach an intersection she can't see yet. They walk to the curb. The sun pushes through a thin break in the clouds, briefly, like a hand opening. Alyssa doesn't call it a sign. She calls it weather. And still, when a car brakes at the light and waits, she notices. Someone chose to pause, and the world stayed intact. Tomorrow she'll have to choose, again and again. Today, at least, she knows what it looks like. A week later, the benches are full again, winter coats and patience. Alyssa steps in without jewelry, hair pulled back, the kind of plane that asks for nothing. No phone in sight. Caprio raises his eyes. Ready to proceed? If I may speak first, she says. He gestures. She turns to face the room, not the camera that isn't there. I used to think justice was an advantage, she begins, voice steady. Something my life had more of because doors opened when I knocked. I was wrong. Justice isn't a pass. It's a mirror. What I saw this week wasn't my reflection. I saw the cost other people pay when I confuse urgency with importance. She breathes, unhurried. I went to Hope Road. I met a 9-year-old who measures victory in laps. I watched a boy stand for 3 seconds and look like he'd climbed a mountain. I have treated time like a private asset. It isn't. It belongs to all of us at the crosswalk. She swallows, keeps going. I can't undo the morning I sped past that clinic, but I can change what I do with the mornings ahead. I've drafted a plan, school assemblies, campus workshops, a peer-led pledge for first-year drivers. I'm calling it Second Chance, because you gave me mine, Judge, not by erasing the record, but by making me read it. Silence gathers, not hostile, not sentimental, listening silence. The officer who stopped her watches with the careful neutrality of someone who's seen promises evaporate, and a few, rarely, hold. Caprio folds his hands. Anything else? Yes, she says. I'm sorry. Not as currency, as acknowledgement. He lets that sit, then nods once. You have made my job easier, he says. Punishment alone would be lazy here. Learning is harder. It lasts longer. The officer steps forward a pace. If more drivers talked to kids before I met them on the shoulder, he says, I'd write fewer reports. Alyssa meets his eye. Come to the first session, she says. Tell them what you told me on the side of the road. That speed is a choice, not a mood. Caprio reaches for the citation, touches the corner with a fingertip. As for the fine, he says, I'm directing it to your program. Not as absolution, as seed money. Accountability can fund prevention. A murmur moves through the room, soft agreement. Alyssa's face breaks into a wet, surprised smile, the kind that doesn't sell anything. Thank you, she says, not for lenience, for direction. He gives the smallest smile back. Drive slowly, on your way out. Months fold by. A local paper runs a small story above the fold. Second Chance raises first 100,000. Alyssa stands at a high school podium 2 blocks from the zone where she once flew. No entourage. A poster behind her shows a crosswalk, not her name. Rules aren't chains, she tells the students. They're reminders that a stranger's life is happening beside yours. In another room across town, Caprio signs a stack of files. He pauses, hears the faint echo of a child's bell in memory, and turns the page. Sometimes the law imposes. On its better days, it instructs. Today, it managed both.